Perhaps before we start, um, I was touched by that last program, and I suppose some of the reasons we have done this project, and we'll come to that maybe later on, but it did touch us that we're on a kind of a similar mission. But the reason we haven't given God 51% at the moment is because we're making losses. So we didn't want to ask God to invest one way. So as soon as we hit profits, we're more than happy to give him his 51% or more. Right. Are you in charge of the flicker, or am I? No, I'm not.
That's not what seeds does. No.
Okay, I just thought, first of all, was this a eureka thing that we thought of this project while sitting in the bath or whatever? It wasn't, okay? There was a long genesis to this. I suppose it first of all started with COVID. We don't like talking about COVID in terms of, I suppose socially we were deprived of all sorts of liberties, we were being isolated, etc. Furtively, and some of us Christians actually met in an undisclosed location, and we enjoyed one another's company and time of prayer, etc. And one of the things that came out of that was, wouldn't it be lovely if we were actually living on a community project like a farm or something, that we wouldn't have to isolate like this and we could still share and enjoy life and not have this deprivation. So we had all talked about perhaps the idea of a community living where we'd all do different projects, again, for God, but also to enjoy one another's companies, etc. So that was part of it. And then in Bible study one day, Mark was away actually, there was somebody else took the Bible study, and he asked us to go outside here, and he said, he basically asked us why we were here in the Algarve. Why had God chosen to put us in the Algarve? And the retirement, I suppose most of us were retired. And he asked us, did we know the difference between a Portuguese and, say, a British or Irish money box? And before we had a chance to think about it, he took from behind his back his Portuguese money box and just smashed it on the ground. And a load of coins went flying all over the place. So there might have been 50, 60 people there. Everybody started running down after the money. And he said, leave it there, put it back. And he made us put the money in the ground where we found it. And he said, I don't want to see you people here as a Portuguese money box, with all your talents, etc., locked within your brain, your experience, your international business, etc., etc. Are you going to be like that Portuguese money box? Everything locked away forever in a day? Or are you going to use it for God's purpose? So, you're going to roll it. So, Fidel and I, big family, we were discussing what could we do here, why are we here, and etc. And as usual, a wife pins you to the ball and said, well, you had a rose farm in Africa, which I did. And she was saying, and I said, I don't want to start that again. I don't want to invest $500,000 in greenhouses, etc., But in the end, when we thought about it, we said, we could actually do it without fancy greenhouses, etc. So we decided that we would go ahead. And we did a little bit of research on the kind of flowers we would produce through the seasons, etc. But not much more than that. We can do a lot of research. Okay, so qualification for the tasks. I'm not a horticulturalist, and I don't have a farming background, except in Africa I did have some farming, but I'm actually a business person. Fidelma was a secondary school teacher. So I was more used to working with large companies as financial director. But in Africa, for tax reasons, I got the company, which large civil engineering company we had a lot of profit. So in Zambia, we were encouraged to get into farming for tax breaks, etc. So that's what we did. We had about 20,000 acres of land, etc. And then for the last 7 years in Africa, I had my own farm. We had dairy and soya, wheat under irrigation, etc. And I also had the Rose Project. So we decided that, okay, we would go for it, and unlike any other business I've been involved in before, we would do all sorts of research, and you do a proposal to banks. For the Rose Project, we had to go to the Dutch Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, etc. So you did your proposals, etc. This we decided we're actually going to trust in God and just jump in deep end. Okay. So finding a suitable quinta, it sounded easy. All we wanted was about 2-3 acres of land with adequate water, etc. But it actually took quite a while, and we visited numerous properties, uphill, downhill. We visited properties that said they had beautiful wells, and as you can see there, having thrown stones down hundreds of these, all of them were dry. I mean, all of them. It was just amazing. Until, anyway, I'm jumping the gun about. So we prayed about it, etc. And one fine day in July or August, because it was extremely hot, I was fed up at the end of the day. And Fidelma decided she wanted to visit the last Remax store, I think in Almansilla or whatever. And I had it at this stage. I said, no, I need a break. I'm not going in. Fidelma went in.
Okay.
What happened?
Okay. We're exhausted. We were just really, really tired, and we were going back to Ireland. The day after, we were heading back to Ireland. We said we've searched and searched and we've found nothing. So I saw a place in Almansilla. I said, I'm going in here. One last one was it? Oh, forget it. It's going to be the same. This will be the same as the last one. So I went in anyway, and I said I'd seen some place in Almansilla, and I said to the guy, I said, we're looking for a specific property. I said we need something about 10,000 square meters. Paul said we need water and we need some sort of a ruin on it so that we can build on the ruin. And I went over to the desk, and the guy was looking at it, and the other guy, the estate agent, walked down smiling. He said, forget about that. He said, it was his friend, forget about that. I have the ideal property here for you. And I said, what size is it? And he said, it's over 10,000 square meters, as we said. I said, does it have water? He said, yes. Well, he said, does it have a borehole? Yes. I said, is there water in it? He said, yes, there's water in it. And there's also a well, so there's also a well. Does it have potential to build? And he said, yes, have a look at the screen here. So I was looking at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe. And I thought, wow, pretending not to be excited. And I said, so when can we see this? Because we're going home the next day we're going home. And I said, look, unless we can see that this today or tomorrow, we won't be looking at it. We really need to see it. And he said, okay, we'll go now. He said, we'll go now. So I said, okay, where is it? He said, is it near? It's quite near. He said, it is quite near. So I came out to the car, back out to the car, and Paul was exhausted. You know when you're really, really tired at the end of the day? I said, we're going to see one last property. He said, oh no.
Don't milk it. Yeah, if you go ahead, Fidelma.
Yeah.
So Fidelma's found us this property. I had a good look at it with a couple of people who know about these things, and we found that it had really good soils, nice ratio, 2 sand to 1 clay, and everything else in between, which means that when it rains, the clay holds the moisture in the soil, and yet the sand, if it gets very, very wet, allows it to drain. So it's kind of pretty much ideal. The well, when we were there in July, August, maybe, or when we came back in September, the well was still just 4 meters below our feet. And I went across to the ironmongery and I got a weight and some cord and put it down, and it went down 17 meters in depth of water. Very, very good water. There was a borehole, but somebody had stolen all the equipment, so we couldn't test it. But based on what we could see in the well, it was pretty obvious that it was good water. The land is completely flat. We don't need fancy drip irrigation. Sorry, we have drip irrigation, but we don't have self-compensating in that because it's not uphill, downhill. There was very little in terms of rock. So we were blessed. It's 251 meters altitude, which we didn't really think about too much, but in fact, it's turned out to be one of two places in the Algarve that you can grow flowers that you can't really grow down on the sea level. So for instance, as an example, I went into one of the biggest plant sellers here, and I wanted flowering bushes like cherry trees, lilacs and whatever, and they said, we don't have a single one of those things. There were 17 things I wanted. And I said to the owner, why don't you stock those? Because they'll grow, but you won't get flowers, you won't get cherries, whatever, nothing. So what we found is that, that unless you're in either Monchique or Saint-Brache, being in Saint-Brache, it means that we can grow literally anything. It grows walnuts very, very well, and that's a good indication that you're going to be able to have flowering cherries and all these other things that you can't get at the Algarve. So in terms of florists, etc., it's ideal. What else can we say? Yeah, it's on the main road, it's got all the utilities, etc. And one other thing is, it's also the wettest valley in the Algarve. We get more rain than elsewhere, which is why we have so much water. So I think the other thing was we talked about community living, and it turns out that we have a potential for, I think it's 1,160 square meters of building, and that's been increased now by another 400 or 500 square meters because of the way we're developing it. So we hope to have a community living there in the not too distant future. Okay. Where did that come from? Okay, so in 2021, in the middle of COVID, we bought the property. We tried various varieties, we tested the markets, and basically just got used to what was happening there. And we also, still in 2021, we planted things like peony roses that take 4 years before you can harvest anything. So we're just getting our first peony roses this year, having planted them back in 2021. 2022, we developed 50% of the farm, and we started making our own polytunnels. We also started making a lot of our own plants, so we just buy a small amount of things like dahlias and others, and we then propagate from that, so that we have a huge stock now. We probably have 2,500 dahlias, which would cost the guts of 10,000 or more. But more importantly, we test them all first, and we only increase those things that were interesting, grew well, and the florists wanted. So not only do we have 2,500 plants of that product dahlias, but it's exactly what the florists want. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. In 2022, we really tried hard. We went to Lille markets, we went to Liao, and to cut it very, very short, they said we were selling illegally, we needed a license. When we went to get a license, we didn't speak Portuguese, we didn't have company tax returns for that year, etc. There were all sorts of barriers put up. And in the end, we said, right, we'll deal with florists. Florists are not the easiest people to deal with in Portugal, not because they're not nice people, but they sell so few flowers. In Portugal, basically, unless you've got a friend who's died or a friend is getting married, etc., there's very few flowers bought. And so we found that although the florists loved the flowers, the amount they were buying was just, it wasn't viable. So that was 2022. That was an education. So we'll go forward. I'm going to cut it quite short because I want to get to other things. But we made great progress through persistence. We kept going to wedding planners, and they were a waste of time because they're like the conductor in the orchestra. You know, they're not just dealing with flowers, but it's wedding venues, music, the whole gambit. And we decided that the best tack now was to go to wedding florists. You know, florists who specialize in weddings. And we decided, Jim knows the area I'm going to talk about, Os Augustus. They were a big wedding venue, and we just loaded the van with mainly dahlias, is my memory, dahlias. And we drove up the drive without an appointment, whatever. And it was a total game changer. We set up in the courtyard, there was a table there, and we put all our flowers out, and then we went and knocked on doors and asked to see the florist or the owner and whatever. And this florist came around the corner and just said, "Ooh la la." She said, "You are a game changer." So she totally was blown away by the flowers. I mean, she could not believe it. She said, "Look, we tried to use dahlias from Holland and elsewhere, but they arrive in terrible conditions. But these are just stunning, and the size and varieties we had chosen, etc." And she immediately got the owner involved, and basically it was agreed that we were going to supply all of our range of flowers to this venue. So we are happy that we now have a good base. There's a second florist now joining Os Augustus, and she's been instructed by the owner to buy just from us. We're expanding our range.
They also want flowers for them travel.
Yeah, no, we give them much fresher flowers, and they can't believe how long they last in comparison to others. Some of the products we're selling in springtime particularly are lasting up to 2-3 weeks in the vase, which for a florist is just, in fact, it can be bad for the average florist, because one florist said to us, "The problem with your flowers is they last so long." And one of our best clients came in last Friday and said, "I'm terribly sorry, I'm here to tell you that I don't need flowers this week because the flowers I got last week are still so good." Now, interestingly, for weddings, believe it or not, they're not interested in longevity. They really only want flowers for that day. But again, where we are good at is we can arrive with just beautifully open blooms, you know, where we deliberately leave them on the bush or whatever. So we can harvest the day before and bring them at the stage where again, if you're ordering from anywhere, but in particular Holland, typically they will harvest in bud. You know, like for instance, a peony rose will appear just like a large marble. It's almost solid. So you have to hold on to it for a week or two until they come to, whereas we can deliver exactly what they want. So that has been a big change. And just last Friday, we are, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. The game changer, French florist, came to us at the end of 2023, and she asked, would it be possible for her to move on to the farm? And we said, "You want to move on to the farm?" And she said, "Yes, I'm going to continue with Os Augustus, but they've given me permission get my own weddings, etc.
Wow.
And I would much prefer be on the farm because the range of flowers you have is so great that I just want to run around, a week or two before and pick exactly what I want and whatever. And she's much, much happier there. But it's brilliant for us because she can tell us exactly what color of pink. I always thought pink was just pink, but not to a bride and the mother of the bride. As Johnny Cash used to sing about Ireland, 40 shades of green, there's at least 50 shades of pink. We're lucky. We have from dark pink right through to almost white pink, blush pink, and all these other new things we've learned about. So the French florist is now working every day on the farm, and she is learning and we're learning, and it's absolutely brilliant. We can look into the minds of a wedding florist now. She helps us on prices. She's prices from Holland, South Africa, Spain, whatever. So she's giving us tremendous insider knowledge as to what price we go to. She does about 1 to 2 weddings a week between April to October. We have now, through Rosa Augustus and the second lady, she does about, let's say, 5 weddings a week. And on Friday last week, we dealt with the biggest company here on the Algarve who decided they're going to take flowers from us. They do about 300 weddings a year. So it's, so that was actually that joint venture idea in a way came from Graham, because if you remember, he said he said a lot of things, and we'll get to that just now. But one of the things was either buying over a company or doing a joint venture. And honestly, one of the smartest things we've done is by being initially kind to the florist and helping her out and all sorts of things, but we're now major allies, where she's recommending other florists, wedding florists to use, etc. So that really is part of the game changing. And interesting, just about last Friday, again, I was quite well prepared for discussions on prices, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to price. However, when I met the managing director, we had a very, very good discussion, and he said, I don't know how we're going to come to an agreement. And I said, well, you know what? It's a very simple solution. We have only one thing to talk about, price, because you've already told me our quality is stunning, the size of your buds, stunning, and the length, etc. So what should discuss is just price. So he said, yes, that's true. And I said, for me, that's easy then. I have to compromise, you have to compromise. So he said, well, we can get some of those flowers for between 30 and 55 cents, depending on the season. And I said, okay, but you agree there's a premium to be paid to have our flowers. They're fresher, bigger, and whatever. He then went into Portuguese with his chief florist, and they nattered for a while, and they sort of came to an agreement, but still didn't want to divulge too much. And I said to them, okay, I know I asked for, let's say, €1 a stem, less 10% if you bought in bulk. I'll tell you what, if you take hundreds and hundreds of particular flowers, we will give them to you for 65, and the other ones we'll give you for 75. And he was more than happy to do the deal. So we got from his high point of 50 cents, I think he said, to 65 and 75. So like you can imagine how impressed he is with the flowers, that he was prepared to say absolutely. And you also have to realize, I suppose, the psychology. Can you imagine a bride on a wedding day? Like, she wants the absolute tip-top best. And you could see the chief florist was almost kicking his shins, saying, buy them. So anyway, we had great success. So if this all happens, you know, we'll have gone from maybe 2 weddings a week to, I don't know, 15. So actually, that was one other thing I said to him. I said, the nice thing about dealing with a small company like ours is you can try us for a year. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to supply you with the whole range and all of your flowers. So I would much prefer to work with you. I would like, for instance, you to tell us which flowers, which colors, and whatever you particularly like for the weddings, and we will then, that's what we will plant next year. So there's a lovely symbiotic relationship, say, between us and the florist, between us and this MD and the company, you know. So it's actually getting into a very pleasurable thing that you're actually helping one another. There's no real issue about price. You're talking about volumes, etc. So if it all happens, we'll be giving a cut at 51%. So, critical question, would I recommend it to somebody? I wouldn't, and I'll tell you briefly why. Flowers are highly perishable. I know I said some of the flowers are lasting unbelievable length of time, but it is springtime and it's cool weather conditions. Roll forward July and August, and boy, you have to be so careful with the flowers. And what we found is, Fidel and I are fortunate that we worked hard all our lives, so we're okay pension-wise and whatever, so we're not dependent on this. In fact, we came here to retire, and it was only when we were challenged to do something for God on the Algarve that we got into this. So we're fortunate in that we can experiment, build our own polytunnels, make our own plants, etc., and do it cheap. But there's no way we could have drawn anything like a salary from it. Now, we do have 2 employees that we pay, and they're fine. But it'll probably be this year before we kind of break even or making a small profit. But next year, when we have exactly the varieties that these people want, it'll be a completely different story. What did we? Oh yeah. So yeah, rather than talking too much more, let's go and see. Graham issued us a 7-point growth plan, if you remember, and asked us to pick out 2 out of 7 points for growing our businesses in 2024. And I just want to go through those 7 points and see did we tick more than 2 points. So partnerships, I've already said that the French rose grower elected to move on to our farm rather than working in Amos Augustus. So that for us is fantastic. We didn't have to pay this person to move on, you know, she's self-employed, etc., but there is a fantastic symbiotic relationship. So we can tick 1. 2 was a very interesting thing, and we took that to heart. So what we've done is we have now decided to grow really expensive David Austin roses, highly perfumed, the right colors, etc., etc. So now instead of, say, selling dahlias, we're selling dahlias and roses and perennials. So we're kind of almost tripling the value of each sale to each florist. So by increasing our range and adding a kind of expensive product, we've grown our team. We now have 2 full-time employees. We've got the French lady, and she's also going to bring 2 more employees onto the farm for 6 or 7 months of the year. Growing our own brand, I think we have that now. We have established a great trust and relationship with these really top florist companies. And we have grown our market. We're certainly getting better at selling. The MD of the big flower company I'm talking about, he's inherited from his mother. And I didn't know this at the time, but at the end of the meeting, he said, you know, I really enjoyed our meeting. And he said, how long have you been growing flowers? Are you a horticulturist? And I laughed and I said, no, I'm actually a financial director. And he burst out laughing and he said, you'll never guess what I am. And I said, why? He said, I'm a psychologist. I said to him, how did I do? And he gave me the ultimate thing. He said, we'll be seeing one another more often. So, we appear to be big pals, and so hopefully that's going. So look, just remind me again, number 7, I'm not sure whether you passed the test there. What was the slack adjuster in a slack period, I think?
No, it's having a product you can sell at a very high profit margin that
Right.
can make up for a bad month or a bad
Oh,
quarter.
okay.
So I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you've got some higher end products you're selling at 75.
Yeah.
That was more kind of I don't know, doing
Yeah.
a mega exhibition somewhere and taking 10.
Well, we might get half a mark for adding these highly perfumed roses
I
and
would give you
things.
6
So.
star.
All right. So, and also we have Mario here in the audience. We can recommend him for, he did a great favour service. We paid him, but I think he could have charged us more. He did a very good job on setting up a website. So we now have a website, and it really is impressive when you go in there because the whole range of our flowers through the seasons, when they're available, etc. And that was a key to dealing with these florists. Like, it's all very well bringing in a sample, but they want to know what numbers, how many anemones, how many dahlias, how many roses can you give us, so you have to be kind of on top of your game when you go into them, and that's, so going back to that thing, would I recommend somebody to get into it? I wouldn't really. Just as late as last Thursday, we went to a large florist who does hotel receptions, and she's a really nice lady, we get on really well, she's buying from us, but just last Thursday when we were in, she said, you guys are so brave. Getting into flowers in the Algarve. I never thought I'd see the day when we have an Algarve kind of serious flower, wedding flower producer where we can get almost everything. No, not quite. We never do the full range, but so that was a compliment in itself. So.
Yes,
Great story.
wow.
So, I'm going to ask the first question, which is, it seems to me like you've had to scale massively from where you started to be able to have that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So and you're not a big operation, you've got two staff. So how are you handling that kind of scaling up from a couple of weddings to 15, I think?
Well, we thought we'd be giving God 51% of our time, but it's turned out to be 100%. As an example, not alone is the farm bursting at the seams with cold rooms and flowers and that, but our apartment in Corcovado, if you were to visit us, is full of little seedlings. We're multiplying dahlias. The whole balcony, which is enclosed in glass, is effectively a greenhouse. And we're very fortunate in that Fidelma and I are both committed to it, and we're both committed because our social life has gone to pot, hasn't it? Our friends are complaining, both in Ireland and here, that we really don't socialise all that much, and it's possibly true.
But it takes that effort.
We're kind of consumed by the project. But having said that, I mean, to me it's thrilling proving that we can grow lilacs and cherry trees and all sorts of things on this farm. Like, it is a challenge and it's interesting, and even the florists are interested to see how we're getting on, and
So is there a kind of a plan that as you start getting into profit, will you bring in a manager to take some of the workload off you guys?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and we haven't fully resolved it yet. However, there are two couples both actually from the UK, although one of them, the lady is Brazilian, and the other lady, funnily enough, is from Africa. So while they're from England, they've actually come from South America and Africa. They are really keen on growing their own vegetables. One of them works for the government as a water conservationist, going around farms, etc. And they want to retire in 2 years' time, and they want to introduce more modern greenhouses. They want to do all sorts of things with us. And there's a good, I'd say Fidel was very young, but I'm a little bit older. The two guys in question are about 60, years of age, newly retired, and I would like to pass the baton on to them.
Yeah.
But I would still remain there, sort of on the horticultural, the plants and new ideas and stuff. And maybe liaising with the people we've got a good rapport with now in the wedding industry. It's a very difficult industry to break into, the wedding industry. It's only when you've been adopted by one of the big wedding florists that people take you seriously. And suddenly they want to meet you. So in terms of, we would like to have a succession plan, and luckily, both of these couples also would not be averse to this idea of 51% being forgone. So.
I mean, I think the other thing, I think it's such a great story. I think you should try and get a little bit of PR out of it. I think you should perhaps write something up for local newspapers and magazines and things. You get the brand out there and just reinforce it. I know you're mainly kind of B2B, but just having a little bit more publicity around what you've achieved. I think it's a really great story. I mean, it's a kind of Coles to Newcastle story. You're making flowers better than they can. And getting a contract like that with one of the main wedding providers is a huge achievement. Any questions from you guys for
Are you concerned with severe water restrictions that are imposed on the Algarve? Right June, I think of this.
Yes.
It's not any government water; it's actually water.
We would be concerned because you take say we've got about 300 or so peony roses that have taken 4 years to come to fruition. This is their first things. We've got, as I said, 2,500 dahlias, all sorts of things, and trees and stuff. So if it was a complete water shortage, we would have a big problem. The only thing is, if government did come knocking on our doors and we had to make a case, we've always done drip irrigation. We've always used landscape fabrics, which means that the sun hits the fabric, not the soil. So we're conserving water. We reduced our water consumption by about 40% by going drip irrigation, and with the landscape fabrics, we probably reduced it further. And we only irrigate every second day. So
is it possible to recycle, to use some of the aquaponic type?
We have not thought on that level yet, because it's kind of it's a different situation, it's a possibility, but for the moment we are lucky in the sense that our valley seems to be genuinely the wettest valley in the whole of the Algarve. We got, in a 24-hour period, I did not believe the rain gauge. I had to actually check with other people. Now, they had a lot of rain, but they had nothing like we had. We got 5 inches of rain in one 24-hour cycle. It was a deluge. And again, because of our soils, it didn't flood the place. And because we're flat, we don't get soil erosion. Like the rain is equal over the whole thing, and so it drains very, very well.
I just have a question about, you mentioned the 2 acres, 2.5 acres, right?
Yeah.
10,000. So is all of that greenhouses planted over, or is just the expansion step by step?
We haven't invested in greenhouses.
Right. So it's open. We cleverly moved polytunnels that we've designed ourselves, and instead of talking about hundreds of thousands, we've designed we can do about a 34 meter long tunnel for about €300. which is ridiculous. So it means we can put our little baby plants under that for maybe 2-3 weeks with irrigation, etc., and then we can take it away to the next one or whatever. Or say when our flowers are in production and you don't want the rain spoiling them, then we put them under the panels. If there's no threat of rain, we take them off so it works out fairly well.
And one more question. So it's kind of like a bakery. You bake 100 cakes, only 55 get bought. What do you do with the rest? So is there a problem like that?
Yeah.
I was just sitting there.
Yeah, that's a very good question. That is the reason we went to the big guys.
To make sure that the supply is.
Yeah. So we are more interested in high quality to these weddings, okay? But this big outfit have massive cold rooms. So for instance, I'm going back to them now and I'm going to say, look, I want you to commit to X hundred of this variety and whatever over this period. Yeah, and they can store them and whatever. That would really, that's where you make the money. If you can sell everything.
Yes.
Whereas if you have to throw 45% away. And that's why we're working with the smaller, the medium, and the big one.
Last question, guys, because of the time.
Just one idea. I'm a cook for profession since 25 years ago. So
edible flowers?
No, that we could eat.
Yes, edible flowers.
It's a good possibility.
Yeah.
So fancy restaurants,
Yes.
they put the flowers on the plates, so
Yeah.
we should choose which one.
We will try anything. Not shown on that slide, I
That's-
forgot
it's
to
an
mention
idea.
it, but
It's an
but last 2022, because of a lack of sales, we went big time into vegetables. And we were very successful with vegetables, but
The biggest onions I've ever seen.
Amazing. How about funerals?
Those monsters I've seen are yours.
Funerals.
Yeah.
funerals. Yes. We
Well, the flowers will know where we are, they come from, will come from.
no, but but it's a different flower
It is.
typically. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot to tell you one funny story. We had just moved on to the farm and we were going through this old abandoned building that we have, and from way up, 2 stories up, came these 2 Dutch ladies head, and we hadn't met them, and they were saying, "What are you doing down there?" We introduced ourselves, etc., and they said, "Oh, you're moving into this farm. What are you going to do?" And we said, "We're going to grow flowers." And the pair of them laughed themselves silly till I thought they were going to fall off the building. And I said, why are you laughing? And they said, well, you didn't know this till now, but we set up a beautiful flower shop in Queenborough, the university town, and we brought in the best product from Holland, and we had a range that nobody in the town had ever seen, and everybody would just call in to look at the flowers, but nobody bought. And she said, we don't want to kill your business before it starts. She said, but honestly, you're getting into the wrong business. She said, let me tell you something about the culture about flowers in Portugal. We went into a hospital to visit a sick Portuguese man that we had grown fond of or whatever, and we brought him these beautiful flowers, and he lost his head and said, "Get out of my bedroom, I'm not dead yet."
Yes, because every Saturday they'll buy flowers to take the funeral.
So this is what we heard before we planted the thing, and we said, no, in God we trust, we're going to go ahead.
You're welcome to stay and network a bit longer if you want. I think the next meeting will probably be the first week of May. So we'd lovely to see you back there again. Hope that was useful. It was an enjoyable session.
Sorry, on a selling point, because this man would kill me if I don't mention something, or he sees that I'm working hard. If you have knowledge of somebody who is having a wedding or a funeral or anything else, please trust us that we have generally the best flowers that are available. I mean, the fact that wedding florists are buying directly from us is your stamp of approval that we really have the best flowers. So, all right, well, great. Sounds good.
That's stupid. Yeah, I want to see what I outside.